Hello. Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha McCann. I am the Director of Communities at the Solutions Journalism Network. And we're very excited to have Joseph Lichterman here today with us. I think this is maybe the first or second Facebook Live we've done as an organization. And today we're going to be talking with Joseph about a publication called, kind of a publication, I guess, called The Solution Set. Joseph is a senior business associate at the Lenfest Institute of Journalism based in Philadelphia. He writes The Solution Set, which is a weekly report on innovation in journalism that the Institute produces in conjunction with the Solutions Journalism Network. Prior to joining the Institute, he was a staff writer at Nieman Journalism Lab at Harvard, and he also previously reported for Reuters in its Detroit bureau. A graduate of University of Michigan, Joseph was an editor-in-chief of the Michigan Daily, the university's independent student newspaper. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Great. So we have chosen a few different areas to focus on today based on what you, the members of the Solutions Journalism Hub Facebook group, decided, expressed interest in. So those kind of general categories are engagement, collaboration, and local news. So we're going to explore a few different case studies that Joseph has worked on, and then we'll kind of talk about the broader approach about what, how this applies to the broader context of journalism. So to start off, Joseph, can you explain to the audience what the Solution Set is?
Yeah, so Solution Set is a weekly report. It comes out every Thursday as an email newsletter and also on the Lenfest Institute website. And the whole idea behind it is we're taking a solutions-oriented look at the world of journalism. So things that are working in terms of audience engagement, revenue generation, reporting techniques, uses of new technology, and go really detailed and in-depth in one particular topic each week. And so we'll give an overview of the topic, highlight some of the lessons that are working, and point you also toward other resources. So there's a whole wide world of writing about journalism out there. Journalists love to write about themselves. So we'll share some sort of related resources about the topic as well. And the idea is that hopefully we'll go into a lot of detail and that share practical advice and best practices and tips that you can apply in your newsroom as well.
Wonderful. Are we a self-involved bunch? True. So for anyone who's new to the practice of solutions journalism is rigorous reporting on how people are responding to problems. And so what I love about this framing is who is responding to problems in journalism. And the question we always ask when we're doing solution stories is who's done it better? And so that is a question you seem to be taking to kind of your work as you approach writing these case studies every week, is who's done it better in engagement, who's done it better in collaboration, who has taken innovative approaches to responding to problems that we all face in publications around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, at least I'm trying to, is hopefully get off sort of the beaten path a little bit also. I mean, the New York Times and Washington Post of the world are doing amazing work, and there's a lot to learn from them. But I'm hoping also to sort of highlight smaller outlets, local outlets, niche outlets that are doing really great and innovative stuff as well, and are worth highlighting also.
Wonderful. And I'm being told that there is copy at the top of this Be Live video that says TK, TK, TK. So that is just the nature of the live beast, and I can't change it, so we will stick with to come. Okay, so let's dig in. People really wanted to hear about engagement case studies. What is working as newsrooms try to engage their audiences and bring readers and listeners and viewers deeper into the work that journalists are doing. So can you, what are some interesting case studies you have found in engagement?
Yeah, so a couple of examples. I did earlier this year, did a 2-week series on Facebook groups. They sort of are a really trendy topic right now, sort of as Facebook has played with its algorithm and traffic from Facebook has decreased. Groups have become a really interesting way to connect and engage in discussions with readers and users on the platform. And so we highlighted a couple of examples. One was Vox.com, obviously a big national site, but what they did, which was really interesting, is created a group just for enrollees in Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And they were able to do that to have it be a discussion in place. People could get resources and get tips for how to navigate the ever-evolving world of Obamacare, given the political challenges to it and just the inherent challenges of navigating healthcare in this country, which is so difficult. But really, it was a two-way conversation also. So if they had story ideas or were looking for sources also, they had this engaged group of readers who they could question or direct a request to if they needed someone to comment on something or were looking for feedback on a story idea, which was really interesting. Another great example, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that I found really interesting about that case study is that Vox limited, was very protective of who was able to join the group. And you think journalism and the business model and more is better and we want more people engaged, but they didn't look at it that way. They, it was only if you were if you used Obamacare and answered a series of questions. So I liked that they were kind of protective of who can actually contribute and engage in those conversations.
Totally. And that's a theme that I think I've noticed coming back to a lot across the various reports I've done, is that defining your audience is super important in terms of thinking about the readers or viewers or users you want to reach. The way media is so fractured now, you're not going to reach everyone. So you have to pick the readers you really are trying to connect with and serve them really, really well. And a great example of that also is this next Facebook group, which is the Dallas Morning News subscriber group. And so they have a group just for their subscribers, both online and print, and they will post stories and engage in discussions. And reporters are talking there often as well, so giving behind the scenes peeks at their reporting, sort of what went into it. And the editor-in-chief even will answer questions there. And the Morning News has realized that these are their most loyal readers. And so if they can engage with them there, it'll hopefully help with their retention and their subscriber rate. But they also recognize that Facebook is the right platform for this. Subscribers of print newspapers tend to be older and spend a lot of time on Facebook. And so they realized that Facebook was the right platform for this. And they said that maybe if they were trying to reach teenagers or younger people, they would go to Snapchat or Instagram or who knows whatever other platform kids these days are using. But so that's the other thing also. In addition to targeting specific audiences, you have to know how to reach that audience and what platform works best for that audience.
Right, and that's a good point. I didn't even think of that Facebook was the appropriate platform because it's print subscriber. Was it print and digital or just print?
It was both, but I think it I'm remembering correctly, leans heavily toward the print subscribers.
Okay, which makes another case study you've written on how the Texas Tribune is using Reddit. All the more poignant. Reddit is not necessarily a platform used by older generations, from what I understand. Can you talk a little bit about that case study?
Yeah, Reddit is sort of this really idiosyncratic platform. It has its own norms, its own culture, and it's I frankly don't get it, a lot of it. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Reddit. But the Texas Tribune was really,
it's like a rabbit hole you can go down, and it's kind of hard to navigate, but yeah, users love it.
Yeah, absolutely. The people who, I mean, it's not a massive audience compared to some of the other platforms, but the people who are on Reddit are heavy Reddit users and really love it. And there's this whole culture around it in terms of how to navigate it. And each subreddit has its own rules and moderators, and it can be a really tricky place to navigate. So the Texas Tribune, when they went into it, they tried to be really intentional about navigating those cultural norms. And so they would try to be helpful, post links to other publishers, ask questions, try to answer questions from users, not just push their own coverage. And so that really seemed to pay off. There were some skeptical users at the beginning, just as they started to get on the platform. But it seems like over time, as they've proved to be sort of a good citizen on the platform, that they've converted people. And one of the really cool things that I think about the Texas Tribune's Reddit strategy is they were inspired by another publisher. The Washington Post has sort of been leading the pack with this on how they approach Reddit, and the Tribune sort of acknowledge that, say that, hey, the Post is great, and we're going to see what we can learn from them and borrow what's working for them and apply it to us. And so that doesn't always work, but it's really helpful, especially with some of these engagement techniques, to see what's working elsewhere and to see what you can apply for your own audience.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, from what I understand, one of the key principles to Reddit is that you have to contribute and give back as much as you take. And so you as a publisher can't just post links and share. That's considered spam. And that you really have to, be sharing links to other sites. And when I was reading this case study, I was thinking what a strong example this is for building trust, when you are able to point to competitors and say, like, look, we're not the best, or this was a case in which we were wrong. That really helps build trust as well.
Totally. And you have to sort of sound like an actual person and not just be sort of this institutional voice from on high, but it's sort of have a sense of humor and sort of post memes and just sort of engage like you're humans, which journalists are humans. And I think if people sort of can help the readers understand that there are actual people behind all of this, that also totally helps build trust as well.
Right, and that seems to be a thread across a lot of the studies you've looked at is direct conversation between reporters and the audience. That was the case with the Facebook group, with the subscriber model at the Dallas Morning News, and with Reddit. It's hey, this isn't an institution talking at you. This is a reporter talking with you and listening to you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a lot of it comes back to the changes in media overall and how we get news sort of from one-on-one conversations in our text messages or G-chats or from our feeds. It's sort of much more personalized, and we're used to engaging with people online. It's not sort of back in the day, Walter Cronkite coming on TV and telling us what's important. It's sort of having a conversation and being engaging. And you're seeing all publications adapt to this changing world like that. And I think as we continue to move forward, that's going to become increasingly important, no matter the platform or medium or wherever you're publishing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one question I had is, and what made you choose to look into the Texas Tribune as opposed to the Post, since the Post had been doing it longer and kind of had a larger karma score, as you noted, 490,000 karma score, meaning you contribute as much as you take. How did you decide to focus on the Tribune?
The Post had been written about a lot, and so I didn't want to. That's sort of the challenge with this, also more broadly with solution set. I don't want to repeat what other people are doing. And so I thought it was interesting also how the Tribune learned from the Post, and sort of that it's okay to be second. It's okay to take time and learn from the people who were doing it really well, and to highlight how you can learn from others out there. And also how to do it on a more local level as well, because the Post is engaging with national politics, whereas the Tribune just cares about Texas. And Texas is a big place, obviously, but it's a smaller audience and people who are interested in it. And so I think learning from sometimes smaller outlets can be helpful as well.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of the case studies that you've written about for engagement. It seems like there's a lot of focus on Texas. And I was wondering if that was coincidental or if you had any ties there. There was the Dallas Morning News, there's the Texas Tribune, and last but not least, the Tyler in Tyler, Texas, had a really interesting experiment there.
Yeah, the Texas focus has been completely coincidental, but I guess there's just lots of great stuff going on in Texas. But the Tyler loop is super interesting as well, and sort of, I think, is a great bridge between sort of the engagement and local conversation, and showing sort of how, as a local outlet, you can really very local outlet in a relatively small city, you can engage with people in a way that bigger outlets can, by the Tyler loop to help show people another side of town, literally convened readers and took them to taco restaurants, took them out to dinner. And that sort of speaks to the beauty of being based in a certain location and having a sense of place that you can actually meet in real life. And the journalism and the journalists can be sort of this convener in the community and have this network effect almost to bring together disparate parts of the community and help them learn from one another and sort of engage in conversations they wouldn't have otherwise.
So one question I had when reading this and when reading the others as well is, how do these institutions trying these different approaches, whether it's a Facebook group or or Reddit and the taco experiment, how do they measure success? How do they determine whether it was worth the effort to do things like this, to do experiments like this?
Yeah, I think there's no single answer for that. It varies obviously from institution to institution and totally depends on what your goals are. I think all of them go into it with goals, though, whether it's to make sure that subscriber retention rates improve or stay the same with the subscriber Facebook group, or to get X number of stories, or to just try and raise your brand awareness. But no matter what you're going into, I think it's really critical to have a set of goals and to stick to them so you can constantly gauge whether or not something is successful or not. And that's one of the biggest challenges with any of this, is recognizing whether something it is worth doing. We all obviously have limited resources, and journalists are increasingly pulled in a million directions and are having to do more with less. And so if something isn't working, if something isn't meeting your goals, you have to be able to be willing to pull the plug on something and not just keep doing it because that's the way you've always done it, or that's you don't want to stop doing it. And so having goals and having metrics to follow are so critically important.
And so did the Tyler Loop with the taco tour, did they consider that a success? I noticed it was not too many contributors. I think it was 12 people donating something about like $300 or something that facilitated these visits to taco shops and bringing communities together. Did they see that as a win? I know they took a hiatus as well in October. How did that all kind of play out?
Yeah, I think they did see it as a win. They were really so new at that point that they were just wanting to see what kind of traction they could get in the community. And the fact that people were willing to donate and people contributed and they got coverage out of this, I think was an initial success for them. And I think also just that the people who went on it enjoyed it and had fun and were willing to talk about the loop and share more about it was a success also. But I imagine if they did it again this year or next year, sort of as they've grown and evolved a little bit, they've converted into a nonprofit and are changing their publishing model a little bit. I think their goals would change a little bit, but I think at the time it was a success for them.
That's great. And do you think it would scale to larger organizations, or do you think it only worked well because they were so small at the time?
I think similar things could work well for larger organizations. I mean, one of the cool things about the Dallas Morning News with their subscriber group is they have a loyalty program where they'll do events. And so the Morning News is a bigger paper, obviously. And so they similarly will do events where they'll get 100, 200 people in a room to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, or to go on a tour of laboratories at various universities around Dallas. And it's a way for the community to interact with and get to know the paper's journalists. And so that's obviously on a little bit of a bigger scale, but it still has that sense of place and that sort of ability that only someone based in Dallas and sort of with the pedigree of the Morning News can give readers access to that type of stuff. So that puts the paper in this place of a convener, which I think is a really powerful place for a local publication to be.
That's great. Well, we only have about 10 minutes left, and we successfully spent 20 minutes on engagement, which I think a lot of news organizations are doing these days. Let's spend a few minutes on collaboration. Members of the Hub group really wanted to know about successful models of collaboration. When is the right time to do it? How do you determine what the roles will be? All these questions around collaboration. I wanted to start out with a link to a resource. We just released a resource called the Collaborative Playbook, and it's an analysis of the Reentry Project and the Resolve Philly, which is a collaboration in Philadelphia, solutions-oriented collaborative with, I think, somewhere between 15 and 18 news institutions now, as well as university partners, looking at ways to, solutions reporting to problems that Philadelphia faces. So I imagine a lot of those learnings will apply to some of the case studies that you featured as well, but I just wanted to point people to that resource. But some of the case studies that you've reported on include 100 Days in Appalachia, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I remember when that came out, but I like that you did the case study, a year after it came out to see kind of where it landed.
Yeah, so 100 Days in Appalachia was a collaboration. It's housed at West Virginia University. It involves the public broadcaster there and a few other outlets in terms of after President Trump was elected, sort of there was all this discussion of how Appalachian voters sort of propelled him to the White House, but there was this broader misunderstanding, they thought, of that place and of the people who live there. And so it really was a collaborative bringing together these organizations to share reporting resources and to share share stories to publish more broadly about the people who live there. And so to give a sense of the diversity and the people who live there. So they were publishing stories on things like a prom for LGBTQ students and things like that to give you more of a sort of nuanced sense. And they were purposely publishing for readers outside of the region. And so I think that was a key with any collaborative, is to have a real clear sense of mission and sense of who you're publishing for. You can't just say, hey, we're going to work together on this, but to have a really clear, driven focus and mission and have that be very well defined. And a key also is sort of the folks at West Virginia University really took the lead on this. And so this is one of the reasons why I think the reentry project, Now Resolve Philly, has also been so successful, is there is a point person who is managing the collaboration and helping facilitate the conversations between people and letting people know, okay, here's who's publishing what, when it's going to happen, who's working together on what, and sort of making sure all the trains run on time is really, really important for them.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the Verificado? Is that what it's called in Mexico?
Yeah, that is more than 90 organizations working together to do fact checking and real-time reporting around the upcoming Mexican elections. And so the really cool thing about that is that it is all sorts of publishers, everyone from Mexico's largest broadcaster down to small regional 2 or 3 person newsrooms. And they're all collaborating and contributing in different ways. And one of the cool things about it is they recognize that not everyone can contribute in the same way. So by allowing there to be different types of roles people play to focus on this larger mission, they've enabled, the larger mission is to just get as much good information out as possible. They've enabled different people to participate in different ways, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so something that we learned during the reentry project is that having a kind of an unaffiliated project coordinator was something that really mattered a lot. Someone not tied to any of the institutions that could come in and be a non-biased coordinator of efforts. Because there's a lot of vulnerability in coming to an institution who might be a competitor and saying, let's work together. And you're afraid of having the door slammed in your face. And I was wondering if either of these collaborations had kind of an independent coordinator of sorts or a manager, or if they all just as institutions really manage themselves.
Yeah, so they weren't independent in the same way that the Resolve Philly is independent, but there were, like with Verificado, there were 3 organizations that very clearly took the lead. It was AJ Plus, which is the social focus for Al Jazeera, Midan, which is built this platform for the collaboration. So those organizations really have enabled them by playing that really critical, and also Animal Politico. Sorry, I forgot that one. They're sort of a nonprofit or a digital startup for covering independent news in Mexico. So even though they are affiliated, but having those organizations really dedicate more resources to it and then freely give it away to other people was sort of a key component on that as well, and sort of a gesture of goodwill that made a huge difference for that type of emphasis. But yeah, I think having an independent person also is a really strong way to do it, especially in a place like Philadelphia, where historically lots of the organizations have been highly competitive and there's lots of historic tension there. So having sort of an independent mediator almost can make a huge difference and make sure everyone plays by the rules.
That's great. We love you, Jane Friedman-Rudofsky.
Yes.
So one more question about collaborations. What is the most difficult thing that you found in looking into how different collaborations work? That seems to be a common thread across them.
Yeah, I think it's just a challenge of figuring out how to balance sort of your priorities as an organization and your priorities as the group. I mean, it's sort of, I feel like we keep coming back to this theme that you only have so many resources, so many people, so much time. And so figuring out sort of how to balance your resources to contribute and be an effective contributor to the collaboration, but also figuring out how to do what you need to do for yourself can be a pretty big challenge also. And I think there's no good single answer for it, but it sort of depends on a case-to-case basis. But navigating that line is a challenge for every organization, I think.
Sure. Talking about collaborations, one thing that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about collaborating or thinking about launching a project or holding an event at SJN through my work with SJN, the publisher of the Richland Source in Richland County, Ohio, Jay Allred, and he said, collaborate even when you don't have to. And I think that's such a powerful statement that, there's always something to be gained. Of course, there are a lot of reasons not to collaborate as well, but you're talking about growing your audience and expanding your reach and getting, new kinds of people into your world. Collaboration just seems like the way to go.
Yeah, I totally and completely agree with that sentiment.
So we only have a few minutes left. I'm not going to give the short shrift to local news. I'm not going to try to cram it in 90 seconds. So I'm hoping you'll come back and we can do a separate Facebook Live on local news at another time if you're game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be happy to go into the comments and post some links to some of our reports on local news also if folks want to catch up on previous issues.
Excellent. Thanks. And just a few more questions overall about the solution set. How many case studies have you done so far?
I believe we have done 20 so far or maybe 21 was last week, but we started the first week in January and now have been going about 6 months. So it's still relatively new and growing and evolving, and but would love continued feedback. And if anyone has ideas for things we should report on, would totally welcome tips or suggestions also, because we're always looking for new things to cover.
That was my next question, is how do you find these things? How do you come across them? Do people send in tips, or do you just see something and know it hasn't been looked into that much?
Yeah, a combination of both. I spend far too much time on Twitter, so I often see stuff there, but love it when people submit ideas or reach out and share what they're knowing and learning and wanting to share with a wider audience. And that's always the best, when it can be sort of a conversation with between me and the readers and all of that. So always welcome to emails or tweets or other ways to get in touch about cool things going on in your newsrooms.
Excellent. And if people want to contact you, how will they do that?
I'm just at joseph@lenfestinstitute.org. Can message me on Facebook in the group, or I'm on Twitter at @Lichterman.
And if people want to subscribe to the solution set, where should they go?
They should go to solutionset.org, and I'm also happy to post a link in the comments to the sign up link as well.
Great. Joseph, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun and would love to do it again. And if anyone else has any other questions or comments or anything, totally happy to chat more offline.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope that provided a lot of good fodder for you to think about how to integrate some engagement and collaboration into your publications, into your reporting, and hoping to do these on a regular basis. So until next time. Bye-bye.
Talk soon. Thanks so much.